Hello everyone, Julian here, your regular host for Nerds Without Pants. I thought I would take a couple minutes to talk to you before we get this episode started. This special episode, actually, this bonus episode of Nerds Without Pants. I figured we would be having a lot of new listeners, thanks to our special guest, Liana Kerzner, who you may know from various places on the internet. She's very entertaining, and we had a lot of fun talking to her and hope to have her back. The deal is that Angelo was really awesome and proactive in securing a special guest to talk about mental health in regards to video games. But we talked for a really long time, And as I was doing the edits for this episode, I didn't really want to cut anything out because it was all just really fun, really entertaining stuff. But if I had put the whole thing together, we would have been looking at like a 3.5-hour episode. So what I decided to do was split it into two. So what we're going to have for you this week, on this bonus week actually, is going to be the Consumption Junction part of the show, where we just talk about games and media and get into a literary discussion at some point, and there might be some innuendos. There's lots of things. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's what we have this time, and then next week we will have the actual topic of the episode, which again is mental health in regards to video games. And it's going to get pretty heavy, but for now, enjoy this part of the show, and I will come back and talk to you at the end. Thanks, and enjoy.
We gotta start out like this time on...
This week on NWP. What's the deal with us?
I hate talking, and I hate walking next to someone I don't know. Someone I don't know. And I hate pretending to keep up this friend thing when I have enough friends. And I'd rather be at home. Things would be much easier, and it would really save some time. You're my favorite color and my favorite kind of pie. I wish there was a social excuse to make you a cassette tape. I teach you all about my life from side B to side A. Fast forward, rewind, whenever mind.
I'm actually going to stick that. That
I
actually
like it.
worked.
Yeah, that's good. I'll allow it.
Awesome. I'll just edit out the rest of this garbage and keep that. Hello and welcome to this week's NWP. I am joined, as always, by Julian.
Really relieved to not have to host the show, but what's the full name of the
Nerds Without Pants. See, I knew I was going to screw something up.
And you are?
I'm Angelo Grant, and
There we go.
With me, I have Patrick.
Hi.
Excellent. This is already
Well done,
coming
sir. And we have a guest this week, Liana.
Hello.
Hi. Liana is, well, my introduction to her was basically on Twitter and the internet. She wrote a piece on Polygon that got our attention, as well as a few other things. But why don't you, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from?
I'm Canadian, and that fills in a lot of blanks.
So you're cold right now.
Oh, so cold. I actually got snowed in today again.
Yeah.
No, normally the winter's sort of more spread out than it was this year. It was like a green Christmas. We were good up until like first week, second week of January. And then winter decided to play catch up.
Yeah.
Here.
That's
And so it's just been like the thing about living in extreme conditions is it makes you more chill because, you know, like today, 15 minutes before I was gonna like leave my house, it was clear skies. I'm about to open the door. It's a blizzard.
Yep.
So, you know, it was like I just contacted the guy I was going to meet and said, sorry, can't make it. And I actually sent him a picture of what it looked like outside my window so he could know I wasn't bullshitting. Like I wasn't doing I have the flu when you don't want to come into work because you're hungover. Yeah. It was actually like you could not see across my street and it was flash blizzard.
Yep.
yes, and I'm sort of, people call me a professional geek, which is, I suppose, is the most accurate description of what I do overall. I used to be on TV, but I wanted to do more stuff with, video games and comic books and science fiction and all that stuff. So I'm moving more and more and more onto the web. And my first anthology that I've published is out, sort of. It's Schrodinger's book right now. It's an ebook out right now. The tree where a copy drops in March. It's called Wrestling with Gods. It's the 18th installment in the award-winning Tesseracts series. But it's basically about religion and science fiction and fantasy, which was a super, super fun topic.
Nice.
I feel Patrick's ears just like perk up.
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah, I'm totally into that.
Awesome.
Tell me more.
Did I mention this is episode 65?
You did.
I believe you
Okay.
did.
And we'll have to figure out the numerology of that later. But yeah, it's cool because, I'm Jewish, but I get the "you don't look Jewish," which immediately makes me think of "you don't look Jewish" from Spaceballs. But this book's a perfect fit for me because the way we made Passover Seders accessible to our friends is we co-opted the iconography with various superhero, like nerd stuff. And on the Seder plate, because our friends can't read Hebrew. I barely read Hebrew. So, the bitter herb is Batman because he's bitter. And the stuff, the haroset, which is like the mortar that was used in, the pyramids, is a rabbit dressed like an Egyptian pharaoh. And we have the blue lantern, the hope ring from Blackest Night, the multicolored lantern cores. I do the orange on a Seder plate thing because that's the modern Reform women in Judaism symbol. But it's stuff like that. And then we do the 4 questions in English, Hebrew, Kenya, which is High Elfish, Klingon, and I forget the last one we did, but we actually have a book that translates it into these fictional languages, and people get more into it that way. So when I was offered this book, I'm like, yes, it's perfect. I need to do this. And my co-editor, Jerome Stewart, he's Southern Baptist, but he's a gay man. And most people go, what? How is that possible? No, it's possible. They exist. Southern Baptists are not all, Westboro. There are completely awesome, liberal, progressive Southern Baptists out there. And so, it was just great. And, it's a great experience. The first story in the book is called Mecha Jesus, which is a story about a robot that thinks he's Jesus Christ. And it's an intersection of Christianity and Shinto. The Shinto traditions in Japan, because there apparently actually is a place in Japan that's a shrine to a Jesus in the Shinto faith, not the Jesus. It's sort of the Japanese version of Christ, which is a fascinating concept, and it's just done with laughs and this wonderful poignancy from he's an Asian man. The author's name is Derwin Mack, but he's Roman Catholic. So he's sort of fused. He's actually from Hong Kong, not Japan, but he found a way to, kind of smash both sides of his personal identity into a story. And, that's the kickoff, and it just goes from there. There's stories about, the god Ra getting obsessed with Coronation Street and, a mixed martial artist trying to get into Nirvana. And there are some very serious stories too. Like there's one story that deals with the residential school stuff that we've had to deal with up here with our indigenous peoples, the horrible abuses suffered there, but it's still done in like a science fiction-y, type thing. And then there's actually a few stories that I just absolutely love because it was important to me to have an agnostic or atheist contributor as well, like contribution, because a lot of atheists complain that they're left out of the worldview debate, and I think that's an absolutely fair critique. So this beautiful story came in that actually has no God to speak of in it, but the functions of what they do use as a plot device fulfill every, purpose and need a religion did. And I'm like, yes, there's my story that fills that. It's just so brilliantly done. And the thing that's amazing about a good story is the best stories are the ones that sit on the razor's edge of failure. A little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, it wouldn't have worked. The reason it's brilliant is because it cuts right down the middle, and that nuance makes it great. And so it was really humbling to read the stuff that came in. It's on Amazon, but you need to actually type in Wrestling with Gods Tesseracts 18 or some weird self-help book comes up. It's so weird. But yeah, I highly recommend it, not just because I edited it, but because I do believe the work in it is absolutely stellar. And it's fun too. It's not boring or pedantic or lecturing. It's silly. I mean, obviously it's a robot who thinks he's Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something else.
More than you bargained for.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a bit nuts.
Oh no, that sounds actually really, really interesting. I would love to read that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll get you the link.
Nice. So I think we'll just hop right into the conjunction. My gosh.
And that kind of was a segue because that's what I was going to talk about.
We're already halfway through it, right?
Woo, yeah.
So what else have you been up to?
I played Evolve for the first time.
Tell me about that, because the concept sounds fascinating to me.
Okay. What I liked is it's the first, 4 friends in a box game, as I call it, that doesn't require 4 friends in a box. The thing I really wanted to get my hands on was that single player mode. Mm-hmm. And it actually works. Unlike, I was very, very disappointed with the single player experience in, say, Left 4 Dead. Right. That was a game you needed other human players to play because the AI was terrible, right?
Yeah. Or even Borderlands, when you play it by yourself, just isn't that fun, Precisely. It's not the same. But Evolve, I was very impressed by the fact that you can jump between characters when you're playing on your own. Because each character class does have its specialty. You do need all 4. You won't be jumping to the medic much on certain modes. In others, you really do need them. And support is probably the trickiest class to figure out. But even when you're playing through the first time, to really get good, you've got to jump between Hunter and Assault quite a bit. And I found, the single-player campaign isn't really a campaign because it's a procedurally generated thing. So it builds it each time you're going to play. And what it basically does, the game's called Evolve. So the more you play, the more your characters evolve, the more your monsters evolve. And so you're rewarded for playing the same basic scenarios over and over and over again with extra abilities. Now, there's a real stink on the game right now because of that whole Day 1 DLC, all the bundles, the Xbox exclusive content, all that stuff. And that's a real shame because, we're going to be seeing these exclusive periods more and more as the console war heats up in this generation. But there's absolutely nothing essential in these bundles. I think there's an extra thing unlocked early for Xbox, but the idea, and there is DLC. DLC is one of these things that is very contentious, but there are reasons for it. But I found the base experience, really satisfying, especially if you play a lot of multiplayer, and so you can, practice in the single player, which is something I need. I don't like that experience of jumping into multiplayer and just getting slaughtered 20 times before you get the sense of what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So treat the single player as training, but it's good training. It's enjoyable. It's goofy enough that you can crack those jokes. So it's got the good part of Left 4 Dead in it. It's very fast moving and it's colorful. It can be overwhelming. I can see some people getting motion sick. Mm-hmm. because it is there's a lot of verticality in it, like monsters can come at you from up above. I mean, that's the big thing about this current generation of games, is that everything's going way up instead of being spread out because of that extra processing power. And sometimes you feel like your neck's hurting even though you're just using the sticks, because like, oh my god, it's right on top of me. But it was fun, and it was a cool event. Like, everybody was super, super nice. You know, the players, the other, like the gamers, the general public there were super friendly. A guy actually just started talking to me, which is always cool and unexpected, because normally gamers are so introverted that everybody's just sort of there but not there at the same time. But, you know, I was shooting something for Metaleater.com, and he asked me what I was doing, because I was acting goofy. If you see the piece, it's pure comedy. And he actually said, "What's this for?" I'm like, wow, a guy talked. He started a conversation. That's awesome, because they gave us these orange headbands as rewards if you won your match. And so I was doing a thing of, you know, I'd put it on me and go, "Headband of victory."
Nice.
You know, and he was like, wow, he talked, and that was pleasant. And, you know, it wasn't to hit on me. It was just gamer talking to gamer. It was amazing. That thing that people claim doesn't happen just happened. And it might be because we're in Canada. But, you know.
Everybody's more polite in Canada, right?
That's what they say, but it's not true. We're just drunk, stoned, or cold.
No, I live pretty far north, up in upstate New York, so
so you're practically Canadian.
I wouldn't go that far. We have a Tim Hortons.
There you go. There you go. You're getting the Canada creep. Pretty soon you'll have legalized pot and strong beer. And
Probably.
French.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's not go that far.
See, that's the thing. If you want to be obnoxious in Canada, you have to do it in 2 languages. So it's just too much work.
Yeah. One of the things that I liked about Evolve, and this is something that kind of overlaps in a tabletop a little bit, some of my favorite board games are like the Pandemic's one, but I think probably my family's favorite one right now is Shadows over Camelot, which is you know, that or like Forbidden Island, but they're those competitive co-op games.
Yeah.
Where in the case of like Shadows over Camelot, the game is trying to kill you. And that it almost sounds like when I hear about Evolve, it's like, yeah, one person's playing the monster and then there's another group of people playing the survivors. So it's like, even if you do have a noob, it's in your best interests to help him along. So like, you know, if my youngest is playing like Shadows over Camelot, some of the stuff he doesn't quite get, but he can't show me his cards or tell me what he has, so I'll have to like coach him a little bit and like give him hints and do that sort of stuff. And then it's not like I'm helping him. If we're playing like Risk or something and I help him, then my oldest gets a little upset because like, well, why are you helping him? You know, he doesn't need help. You always win. Don't do that. Aww. And but then it's like, you know, since you're all on the same team, it's okay. And I kind of I don't see us playing Evolve because I don't know if it's necessarily something that I really want to introduce the kids to just yet. They might not all be ready.
I would say so, no.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, that concept sounds like something that's a lot of fun for when they're older, probably, or stuff like that. So I really like games like that, and it's neat to see that. What's the buzz, the pop term for that now?
Competitive co-op, or
it's
asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical.
Player.
Yes.
There it is. There's your $10 industry buzzword.
We heard that a lot at the Evolve event. Asymmetrical. 4 versus 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that there's like asymmetrical multiplayer available to me now, and I wanted to play this game so much, but I just have a really hard time trusting the developer because of the day one DLC, not because like I feel, just because I feel like it was unnecessary. It's like stuff like skins that like could have been included with the game and should have if you're paying $60. It's like, what's next? And in a way, I don't want to buy it until it's like $5 and like a bargain bin game because I don't want to support that kind of thing happening.
It's a slippery slope, but I mean, like for me, I think I was really looking forward to that game, even with me not being a multiplayer guy. And then my my excitement for it had cooled way down, like in the last couple months leading up to it. But Liana, this is actually the first time in a while that I've actually been like, no, I probably want to play that now. So it's nice to hear that perspective.
You'll get like a solid 8 to 10 hours out of it single player. Like I could see that just because every time you play is a little bit different. The DLC thing, it's tough because I mean, as a 10-year veteran of the business, oh God, it freaks me out every time I say that. But I understand why they're doing the incentives, because what those day one DLC things are incentives to make the retailers happy, so the brick and mortar stores don't spaz about the move to online download-based transactions on the part of the consoles, and then Steam, of course. And so the different bundles are, we're going to give Xbox this bit of candy, and PlayStation this bit of candy, and EB Games this bit of candy, and GameStop this bit of candy, and then everybody's happy. Dishonored did the same thing. The different pre-order bundles on that game were ridiculous. I got the sell sheet and just burst out laughing because I couldn't make any sense of it. There were too many doodads everywhere. But that is because, the retail space is so competitive, but it's also the reality that for the in-app purchase element of DLC, games are more expensive than we think they are. I mean, we all hear about Destiny costing $500 million, which is, the extreme high end, obviously, but games cost more relative to purchase price than they ever have.
Right.
And we've had that creep. I mean, if you think about the fact that games cost $50 in the 1980s, and if a game cost $500,000 to make, that was considered expensive. It didn't crack 7 figures hardly ever. Now, when you figure these games are exponentially more expensive to make, and they're only charging, $70 or $80, when you think about that, you're getting a lot more game for your money, and it does, the player base isn't growing like it was even 5 years ago. And so now they have to suck more money out of individual players because they're just not seeing that exponential growth, and instead of a game needing to sell 3 million to be considered profitable, now it has to sell 5 to 7. And it's like, holy cow. And even that, you have to suck up all the money from that existing player base. And it's very frustrating for the player. It's very frustrating. And I agree that they shouldn't push it too far because that does insult your player base. But I really do feel for the developers in that, what do? They want to make a quality product that's innovative, but that costs more money than most people are willing to spend. So, what do you do? And that's why I'm a bit zen about the whole day one DLC thing. I don't like it, but I understand it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing is very, very rarely do I pre-order games anymore because, first of all, I want to see if they come out without getting, gutted before they actually, everybody was excited for that Alien game that Gearbox put out, and it ended up being, pretty much an unmitigated disaster. So, there's cautionary tales all over the place of this is why you shouldn't pre-order, this is why you shouldn't pre-order, but then it's like, oh, but then you missed this shiny little piece of bait. So that's I think that's maybe the one thing that I don't like about it, but it's stuff like this is all stuff I can skip. I mean, it's all bling, and it doesn't take away from the gaming experience. The stuff that upset me was the Catwoman DLC for Batman Arkham City that I think you had to pre-order for that or something. I forget.
That one was okay. That was actually just it was right. Yeah, it was just kind of the online pass type thing. That one wasn't as terrible to me.
Right, but I'm just saying, if they did stuff like that with pre-order bonuses, then I'd start to get frustrated. You're going to miss a chunk of the game now because you didn't give us this out of the gate before we even proved ourselves to you.
See, that is a line crossed. I agree with you. I mean, they did have that Joker exclusive map the Joker exclusive maps on PlayStation for Arkham, but that wasn't a pre-order bonus. That was a console exclusive thing. And I think that's a little different. No, I agree with you. If they actually started making chunks of games pre-order essential, I would be ticked. The reason they won't do that is because reviewers never get pre-order copies. We don't get any of the pre-order incentives. And, we're the ones deciding what, arbitrary number we're going to stick on a game. So, sorry, go ahead.
There has been backlash over similar things, like, say, the DLC for Ashura's Wrath. Mm-hmm. I remember we debated about that when we did the backloggers for the game. So.
Yeah, no need to rehash that.
No, I don't want to go down that path again, because I was not a big fan and Julian didn't mind it, but that's that.
Still think you should play it though. That stuff is really good.
Okay.
Really good.
Anything else?
Oh, I could talk forever, but I'll cut myself off.
Are you sure you don't have it? Okay.
It's either that or another drink, and I'll take the other drink.
Okay.
I need to have self-control somewhere, and at this point I choose alcohol over talking.
Which means that the self-control will go out the window later on in the podcast.
Right. You're trading one self-control for another.
Are we going to do shots?
I don't really do shots of whiskey. That doesn't really work. I'll take a sip, I guess. I don't know.
Sip?
Okay, we're sipping our drinks? All right.
Well, it's whiskey. You can't really shoot whiskey. So
I've just got beer, so I
you're
can't
listening
really...
to country music.
I think that's the really cheap whiskey that you have to shoot in order to survive.
Yes, it is.
So, why don't we do Patrick? Patrick, what do you have next?
The rest of this beer.
What kind of beer?
I'm drinking Hoegaarden. I got a 12-pack of a variety of different Belgian beers. I love Abbey ales, stuff like that.
Excellent.
For a second there, I was thinking Hodor.
Hodor beer. It'd be great if the label just said Hodor all over it. That was all.
Very different.
The official beer of Hodor. Yep. It's pretty nice and light, but it also has a 4.9%. Usually Belgian beers are more like 9 to 11%. So.
Yeah, I had a bunch of my family over to my house, and they drank all my Sam Adams Cold Snap.
No.
I have like 2 bottles left now.
No.
What are you drinking?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm drinking. It's called the Black Cab. It's a local winery called Eastdale.
Oh, neat.
And it's this. I'm gonna wine snob right now. We do well with the lighter reds, Gammets, Baccos, things like that. And so this is a blend of a few of those. And I love it because I don't eat meat. I eat fish, and that's pretty much the only animal I consume. And so it's really nice with both fish and spicy food. So I go through a lot of it because that's pretty much all I eat.
So are you near the Finger Lakes? Because that's the only place I can think of that they can go wine grapes in Canada.
Well, we have the Niagara region, which is about, an hour from me, 90 minutes from me, is wine country.
Oh, nice. All right.
And then we've got, BC, which is a completely different climate. It's it's exactly actually like Northern California.
I've been to British Columbia. It's gorgeous.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where, I want to say, I'm going to get this wrong, like Pele Island and things like that. It's the Okanagan Valley, essentially. So that's a completely different microclimate. Ours is more like the, where you get things like Gewürztraminers and Rieslings in Europe. Similar growing conditions. That's why those wines on the white side do very well here, but I find wines, the whites, just way too sweet.
Yeah.
I like the reds.
Yeah. I have oh my gosh, there was a Cabernet Sauvignon they made one time. I can't find it anymore, but it actually was themed after the Dark Side of the Moon Pink Floyd album. It even had like a little prism on the front.
Yes.
I loved that.
Yeah, it was a good wine too.
It was great wine. I loved it. So anyway, as far as Consumption Junction goes, aside from drinks, what have you been up to, Patrick?
Well, yeah, I wanted to start it up on a high note, which was the game that I played because of the PlayStation Plus program this month, and that was Rogue Legacy.
Yeah.
I couldn't contain myself, so you guys don't know, but I actually messaged Angelo about it. I was like, I love this game. I'm thinking like Angelo's got to play it because of how much he loves, 2D side-scrolling platformers and even the new ones like Shovel Knight, stuff like that.
Love Shovel Knight.
Wait, is that one free for PS Plus this month?
Yeah, it's technically for PS3, but there's a crossplay enabled with PS4, so it's actually like getting another PS4 game.
Oh, that's why I haven't hooked up I haven't like turned on my PS3 in months. I better do that.
Yeah, definitely, because like the first day that I played it, I went through 136 ancestors.
You may have a problem, Patrick.
It's new, and it's like a different way of playing because there's all these like plaques on your castle wall that show the people who have died and what they were, what class, like assassin, spelunker, spelunket, queen, barbarian, or like they can be divine, they can be feeble, so like you get slightly different traits. You can eventually unlock something to completely randomize each person's stats, like, although in the process, every time you go into the castle, you get like these coins, and if you get enough coins, you can look at your castle wall once you've died with your descendant, and use the money from your ancestor to upgrade your armor, your mana, your different classes, all this different stuff, and your castle grows. It's pretty fun. But then at the very end, you can get like randomization of like all the mana and strength and stuff like that, your crit hit percentage. It just all becomes random if you want. I don't know if I do, but like there's so many times I can go through this thing with different characters, and every time I go into the castle it's different because it's procedurally generated as well, so it never gets boring.
And
the one thing that's
And so many of the traits radically change the gameplay. Like you can have a giant, you can have a dwarf, you can have someone who's colorblind. I mean, like, and they'll just change how the game plays. Like if they're colorblind, colors will just not be visible.
That's cool.
It's real cool.
Yeah, it's tough too. And if you're a giant, you have these big swords that can like slash through the walls and stuff because the swords don't get blocked or something like that, so you can kind of take enemies out from below.
Yeah,
but
also places you can't go because you're too big.
Yeah, right. And if you're a little guy, then all of a sudden you can get away from things a lot better, or like dash better, but you can't do the same kind of damage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I got really addicted to that game, probably for like 5-6 hours straight the first time I played it.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it's a roguelike, and it just seems like it's got a lot of potential to be like, I could fall into this game for a while, because I like difficult platformers and that sort of thing, so.
It does seem really daunting at the beginning, but once you get through like 20 to 50 characters,
at that point you're just walking through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've beaten 3 out of the 4 bosses before this one door opens that's at the beginning of the castle every time. So, and that all happened in one day. I mean, I was trying to beat the whole thing, let's be honest, but...
Right.
and I came up a little short, but I'll get it next weekend.
Yeah, that I've never considered myself a roguelike fan. Like the ones that I've played before I even knew what the genre was, I didn't care for, like Azure Dreams on PS1, or there was this one on like the original Xbox that I really didn't care for. But some of the more modern games that are a little just slightly more forgiving, like Rogue Legacy, I really like, and also like FTL I've talked a lot about on the show that I keep going back to that, even though it's kind of in the same vein where you just try to have the best run you can. And hopefully you prevail.
That was super hard, though.
It is.
So hard.
Yeah. I feel like the modern roguelikes are leaning on the like side. I mean, which is great because I tried playing like Sheeran the Wanderer, and I do not enjoy this. Yeah, I noped that game pretty hard too. And it was so sad because there are some people, I think Jeremy Parrish was one of the ones who was like, this game is so great, I love this game, and everything he said made it sound fantastic, so I went out and bought it. And then I played it and I was like, I must just not be seeing what's so great about this game. And no, I just don't like it. But when they take that as a baseline and then do their own thing with it, where they keep the element of this is difficult and dying is a educational experience.
That's the key point.
Right.
I think. Yeah, totally agree.
Like when it's my turn, I'll talk about Megaman for a bit, but that is all about try and die gaming, figure out patterns and how levels work and push your way through it. If a game like that came out today, people would say it has roguelike influences.
Yeah. See, one of my favorite PS3 games was Guacamelee.
Yep.
And parts of that game were absolutely punishing, but there was enough reward for sticking with it. Mainly because, you'd find another goat statue and that character was just hilarious. But, there was enough to keep me with it. Those games falter. They venture into the realm of quote unquote too hard when I feel like there's no reward, that try and die thing. You gotta be really, really careful with the balance there, and that's why playtesting is so important, which is something a lot of indie titles don't get the opportunity to do.
I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that Diablo is a roguelike. Like, it's actually a more pure roguelike than some of these other games because of just how it's structured, but they just don't have the permadeath turned on.
Right.
But a lot of it is, you go through a dungeon and you have no idea what this item is that you just picked up, so you have to take it back and get it identified. And, permadeath is an option in those games, but it's never selected by default. So.
Right.
But as someone who did the permadeath thing, I will say that it may be a roguelike, but I dropped the like off of that term real fast when my Demon Hunter died at level 78.
Oh, you got hosed so bad.
68. No, I'm sorry, it was 65. That's what it was. So, yeah, right.
You've never gone back?
Not yet. Well, I as soon as she died, I rolled a barbarian on hardcore, and I think the last time I played, he was like at level 28. I just need to go back to it. I'm sure we'll end up talking about it a little bit because that's kind of one of the focal points of our topic this evening.
Yeah. Anything else, Patrick?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to start on a high note because I'm sort of tapering off on Destiny and.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Destiny got boring.
Off.
You don't say.
I do though. I mean, these last few weeks I've gotten so many of the exotic weapons that I don't even need. I'm just like, why am I going through the same 2 raids over and over again? And I kind of just do it because I'm in charge of a clan that has 20 people or something and 60, 70 followers. I don't know why they follow and don't join, but they do. Maybe they're in other clans and stuff and just like ours, because I play with a lot of other clans too, and they say I'm reliable, so I like, being there and upgrading the things that might be good when the House of Wolves DLC comes out. But it kind of just on this article of Kotaku, I didn't really plan on stopping playing it, but I just all of a sudden would play one day, and then 3 days later maybe I would, and then this last week I just played in the weekend one day and haven't played it in another week. It's I can upgrade these weapons, but it's gonna happen anyway naturally just by playing once a week. I don't have to grind or do anything anymore. I kind of hit a wall and I don't really have any content to do, and that's kind of frustrating in a game that costs $500 million to make.
Well, yeah, but look at it this way: how many hours do you think you put into it?
Only
you don't want to answer that,
right?
No. But I have a follow-up question to that. How how many hours felt like play, and how many hours felt like work.
Yeah, I know, right? I'd expected it would feel more like work if I wasn't like meeting new people all the time, because there's like a big social interaction element, and like you said, you were happy about like people being really nice. Well, like people would seek me out in the tower and be like, "Hey, you look good. Do you want to go on this run with us?" And I'd be like,
"Hey, baby, want to go to the tower?"
Like, "Yeah, you like my armor, girl?" No, but I mean, it's just fun for me to meet new people who are mostly from the South, and
Patrick, like at the risk of sounding too topical, I kind of feel like your relationship with Destiny over the months has been sort of like Destiny is Christian Grey and you're Anastasia Steele, because it's just this up and down thing just all the time. You were so high on it last time you talked about it.
Wait, who's Christian Grey?
Oh, never mind.
Excellent.
That's just Swift.
Excellent.
An educated guess makes me think that's 50 Shades of Grey.
Got it.
Oh, I didn't know who it was either, so I'm glad now.
Cool. Yeah, I know nothing about that.
That's a good place to be. Trust me.
Oh, did you try to read it?
Oh, God. I have to read these things because I have to comment on them. Crap like this. It was actually Twilight that got me into e-readers.
Oh.
Because I had to read it I had to do a talk at a conference. And I didn't want to be seen reading this book, but I do a lot of reading on like the subway commuting because otherwise it's dead time. And I didn't want anybody seeing me read this book, so I started in e-readers. But Twilight was one of those things that I actually read passages aloud to my husband, and he said, "You made that up." 50 Shades of Grey started as Twilight fan fiction. Mm-hmm. And it uses it uses dashes in sentences like rabbit shit. They're just everywhere, just all over the page. And it is some of the worst writing in professional print. Just
thank you.
Really, I have ever read. I thought Twilight was bad, and then I cannot finish 50 Shades of Grey. It's one of the few books that I just, the first one, that I just cannot choke through. And it's because it's just so poorly written, never mind the subject material. You know, it's horrendous.
Ugh. And is there like anything experimental about it? Because that's what I usually like in books. Like I go for things like Samuel Beckett or James Joyce, people like Virginia Woolf who, you know, open up the written word to something more than just plot.
See, what the experimental element of this, and this is going to blow open a lot, unfortunately, for our, you know, use of vocabulary. What 50 Shades of Grey caught, and the reason it became a phenomenon, is that it's sort of cracking open the lid for everybody else on, you know, the weird and wonderful world that is online fan fiction. And online, especially, it's slash fiction, essentially. And that's getting into that, taboo, corners of female sexuality and female fantasy. And that's what 50 Shades of Grey is. It's just not well written. I can name you numerous other authors who write better stuff in that vein. There's the pen name is Peggy Barnett that does similar, like, dubious consent stuff like that, but it's so much better written. And I'd love to see these alt authors, like, you know, if you like 50 Shades of Grey, let me get you onto the good shit, you know, out there. And just what kills me is, you know, and I feel this way about a lot of video games, that when something becomes a phenomenon, it gets exceptionally lazy. And that's the way I felt about the last 3 Twilight books. It's how I felt about the end of Harry Potter. It's how I feel about the movie 50 Shades of Grey, because to the book, to the movie, like, the book, to give it any sort of credit, there are parts of it that are just outright disgusting, and I applaud them for that. Like, good for you going there, just being like unbridled and gross and like just going there. Whereas the movie, of course, it's not going to do that, right?
Right.
Its best ticket sales are in the Bible Belt because everybody's curious about it. It's not because it's good. It's water cooler discussion. You know, like why do people buy games at midnight and not sleep on a weekday? Because they want to be able to talk about it. They want to be the first one in. This is what's happening with 50 Shades of Grey as well. And that's the point. It's like, are you doing this because you enjoy it, or are you doing this because you want to be cool?
Yeah.
And I gave up being cool when I was 6. I was a woman playing video games and Dungeons and Dragons in the 1980s. There was no hope of me being cool, you know?
No,
but,
see, to me, that makes you, like, super cool.
See, I agree, because it's so iconoclastic at that point. It's like no fucks to give territory, right? But I wish I could see more of that instead of this nerd hipster geek-like bullshit that has, like, engulfed, you know, gaming and geek stuff like a freaking spore colony. It's like the flood coming in and just consuming us all and turning us into these, you know, gross things that are just really annoying to kill. And it just, like, God, like, find your own identity. You know, like, you don't have to like these super popular games just because everybody else likes them, for fuck's sake. You know? And I mean, that's just where I come from, because I have seen it from almost the beginning.
Yeah.
You know?
If you want good experimental literature, Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah.
Hemingway. I mean, he was experimental in his day.
Hemingway I find exceptionally depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, well, Vonnegut too, to an extent.
Well, I mean,
the guy that wrote A Clockwork Orange.
Burgess.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite novels of all frickin' time.
But I'm just saying, like, you know, Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. I mean, there's
Philip K. Dick.
Oh, yeah.
great experimental literature out there that's well written. Like, these people earned the right to be experimental.
Sure.
This
well,
stuff?
even, I mean, you want to go into Burroughs, you know, like Naked Lunch, stuff like that. That's out there shit,
that
right?
is world famous for being just very,
yeah. Totally, like, throws out structure, throws out conventional narrative. It's funny because...
It makes Vonnegut look grounded.
Well, if you jump to Japan, it's basically, you know, guidance storytelling. It's just pieces. I mean, Naked Lunch would be totally at home in Japanese storytelling traditions. But for the West, it's like, whoa, what are you on? Well, we know what he was on. Bug juice. But
it's a lot like I'm thinking Haruki Murakami would write.
Sure. Yeah, it's just that fragmented storytelling. The Japanese have no problem doing that. Here, we're just so reliant on structure because we need to be able to peg it somewhere.
I know, that's actually one thing that I, like, struggle with as a writer. It's just, like, I want to be more experimental, but I know I will never be successful that way. Even, like, really smart editors that I have on, like, the stuff that I've already written for this book I've been working on for a really long time are like, yeah, this isn't clear. You gotta, like, just make it about plot. You can't kind of just let language go free right here. And I'm like, but that's what I want to do.
That's funny because in the book I edited, we got this story that was an origin story for a cuttlefish race. And I think the only reason it got in because I'm like, whoa, it's the Reapers from Mass Effect. So I was immediately sort of like, I must read this. But it was esoteric as all hell. And we sort of set it aside and went back to it and set it aside and went back to it. And we're like, this is really weird. And Jerome would go, yeah, but I like it. I'm like, I kind of like it too. And it's kind of rough. And it might need some work. And we went back and forth on it for like a month. And then we finally went, fuck it, let's put it in and just leave it exactly as it is. We're not going to touch it. We'll put it in the middle of the book. People will either get it or they won't. Screw it. This is our one Hail Mary. But that's, editors who are artists who have actually created themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there are some amazing books out there that are experimental. I mean, the writer of Gears of War 2, Joshua Ortega, wrote this novel. And the amazing thing about it is that it's all beginning. It's called Frequencies. It's intended to be just the beginning of a story. So at the point where you'd hit the end of that first act in a conventional 3-act structure, the book stops.
Well, origin stories are usually the best parts, honestly.
Kinda, but
Yeah.
it was just, that was his experiment. And at first I was like, what? Where's the rest of the book? Oh, you clever freaking bastard. And that's why he's good at video game writing, because he understands format, but he's willing to play with it. And I think that's the whole thing about experimental stuff is you gotta know the rules before you break them.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
have to earn the right to...
Unfinished stories can often be like the best ones too. Like, I'm thinking of the Canterbury Tales, which were supposed to have like over 100 tales or something.
Yeah.
Never got finished, and people are always wondering like what could have been with the other ones. And that's kind of the birthplace of fan fiction in some ways. Like, you got to write what you want to see, and there's the Prelude by I think Wordsworth, which is like an entire poem devoted to an introduction, and then it ends at the beginning.
Tolkien left a bunch of his stuff unfinished, too.
Well, the Silmarillion's not finished.
Yep.
Yeah.
His son, stitched up what he could, but...
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's tragic they wouldn't let that movie get made, because that was the one I wanted to see made.
Yeah, that'd be a heck of a movie, though.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think it would be like just as good as a TV show too, because there's so much dense plot going on in that.
You know what? I've had this conversation before, and you're right. We agreed in a previous conversation that the Silmarillion would make a better TV show.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's episodic.
Anything else, Patrick?
Well, I did want to say I do still like Destiny.
I can't break up yet.
I didn't break up with it yet. No.
Good, you're loyal.
Yeah, we'll see with this next DLC, but I have still been playing Rocksmith, and like actually the waning interest in Destiny helped me become a lot better in guitar in these past few weeks. And now where I started hitting 9% of the Purple Haze notes by Jimi Hendrix, I now hit a little over 70%.
That's not bad.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, the solos and stuff still go too fast for me, and I think that it's actually, like, making me feel better than I really should, because sometimes I'm like, I didn't hit that note, but then other times I feel like I totally hit that note, so maybe it evens out, but, like, it makes me feel good, and it doesn't make me sound that bad when I make mistakes, because there's, like, a backing guitar kind of that helps you through it.
Yeah.
So I'm just loving that.
Stop me if I asked you this before, but does this just teach you like raw playing, or does it teach you like how to set up pedal, like not necessarily how to set up pedals exactly, but like what you're looking for to create a tone? Like finesse.
It comes with custom toners and mixers and stuff like that. I haven't like even delved into that because it looks like too much for me right now. I'm just trying to play.
Right. Fundamentals. They'll. I'm sure at some point, if the game comes with it, at some point it probably teaches you how to use it. I would hope. Because I mean, the fundamentals are learn how to work the instrument, then learn how to make it sound. I would imagine the way you want it to sound. So.
Yeah, I mean that's like what separates Rage Against the Machine and stuff from any other person, because it has that distinct sound through the pedals. It's not like it's really hard to play. I can play those at like the high 90% already, and I've only been playing for a month and a half. Like,
and like I mentioned, before, there's bands like ZZ Top that literally hang their hat on their tone.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's important to learn at some point.
But that's what I love about Rocksmith is that I mean look at that. It's teaching you a skill. Like, I adore Rocksmith. I can't play guitar because I've got these tiny little pinky fingers, so I can't hit the G string. I was meant for a very different G string. Okay, I just sort of accepted that. But
I mean,
Beat me to it.
there you go. But
Everybody thought it.
everybody thought it, and that's why I said it. But it's amazing to me. Like, I just love the whole concept that it just took music gaming and it crossed that Rubicon, right?
Yeah.
And I just
that's
adore
what I was afraid to. I was afraid to play like the Guitar Heroes of the world, because I was like, I'm going to spend so much time on this and then not actually learn guitar. Why can't they just like make it real? And then they finally did last year. Because the first one I heard was not so good, but I just purchased that for the songs. So that's coming in the mail because you can import them all. Now, I think that it's a really good thing, because most of the time gaming's end goal can be just to waste your time and then you don't learn anything new. So I wanted to balance all that time out, because I do have, fun wasting that time. And like Bertrand Russell says, the time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time. But I do also
I love the show. I just love the show. The references you guys drop. This is amazing. Bertrand Russell? Yes. That's fantastic.
Well, Thank you.
I feel at home here.
Aw.
And that's what we always hope for.
There we go. And I made a dirty joke, and no one was shocked.
I'm usually the one making the dirty
I was gonna
jokes,
say.
so it was much
okay.
appreciated.
If you really want to hear some good stuff, back when Rob was on here. Oh my gosh. He had no restraint at all.
Oh dear.
Anyway.
But I did want to transition into something that you might have some violent opinions on, which was the new Thief game. I'm not so sure how attached you are, Angelo, but I played it over the weekend and I liked it. It's like it's like Mirror's Edge with stealth elements, so it's kind of fast and stealthy at the same time, and I like the plot as well.
So the Thief games, I played the first two Thief games, the original Looking Glass ones, and they are very slow, very purposeful, even more so than Dishonored. Not that I love Dishonored. I think Dishonored is like the more honest spiritual successor to those classic Thief games. But and I if I recall correctly, there's a lot of people from old Looking Glass over there at Arcane, so that makes a lot of sense. But from what I heard about that, I heard it was more action focused, which I was just like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Not that maybe it's a great game, but I need some time to kind of before I have every intention of playing this game, but I have to, it's taking me a while to just convince myself, look, don't go into this expecting to play a Thief game, even though it looks like Thief on the box art, and it looks like it's got the, your dude with the green eye. I mean, don't. I'm nervous.
Yeah, that was actually my takeaway from Hitman Absolution, which, I went into it, I was like, oh man, I loved Hitman Blood Money, and this is like the first next generation, true next generation Hitman, and then it was not the game I was expecting, because the level design was much smaller and it was broken up in this weird segmented way, but at the end of the day, I ended up having a lot of fun with it once I finally came to grips with what the game actually was and not what my perception of it was.
Yeah, and
that's a very good analysis of Absolution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked what it ended up doing. It's just it didn't give me the freedom that I had in Blood Money, and hopefully the next one will give me that, because that's really what I want. But if it is more like Absolution, I'm at least prepared for it now, and I ended up enjoying myself. I gave it a good review for Pixelbit. It just wasn't as glowing as it probably would have been if it was actually what I was expecting at the time.
See, I think that's a system resources issue because of the cool stuff that nobody noticed that was going on in Absolution, like with the way the crowds worked and the way the enemy AI worked. They just couldn't open it up the way they did in previous games, because that takes a lot of power.
Yeah, the way information is actually doled out through, it's when you get spotted, it's not an immediate alert phase. It's it slowly crawls through the area, and if you can stop it before it hits critical mass, you're okay. But Yeah,
That's right.
That's a pretty big deal that takes, you're right, it takes a lot of processing power for that stuff.
Yeah, and even remember the first thing I saw when that game was demoing was the way the crowds moved. I'm like, oh my god, they're not a bunch of, chicken with a head cut off individual AIs. They actually move like groups of people do, because it was a herd mechanic in the crowds. But that, especially in the experimentation phase when they haven't optimized it because it's new, that takes up a lot of system resources. And so that combined with that, really cool, more realistic ripple effect. I thought some of the things they did with that game was just exceptional, and they didn't get enough credit for it because, of course, everybody freaked out over the subject matter.
Right.
And it's freaking Hitman, right? Like, Hitman is a study in dehumanization. And that's what I love about the series, is that, the way Agent 47 reacts to things are not the way a regular person would, because he's been screwed with, right? And that's what I find so interesting about him as a character, and specifically a video game character, is they make no attempt to make him relatable whatsoever. And so every choice he makes is so fundamentally interesting to me, because it's like looking into the brain of an alien.
Yeah, I mean, even games like that, like the original Thief games, my opinion has always been that they're kind of a study into hedonism, because Garrett isn't doing these things. Garrett is a very, very intelligent character, and the game doesn't even hold you back from that. He does this because he loves it. Like when, just like the options menu, like when you're setting your difficulty in the older Thief games, one of the options was like, you're a thief, you don't kill people. That's like one of the higher difficulties you can set for yourself. And it's like, he doesn't care about people. He just says, oh, this is what I am. This is what I want to do. He doesn't actually value their lives. He's actually just giving into his base desires. But because his base desires are nonviolent for the challenge, that doesn't make him a more heroic individual. I mean, if anything, he's a downright terrifying guy. But
I gotta say that the early goings of the plot in this Thief are pretty faithful as far as that goes, because Garrett has this new girl in his life, this new thief who's like trying to one-up him, and they're both basically telling each other, no, I'm better at this because I love it. And then she's like, oh yeah, watch this. And then he's kind of like, oh, just wait until you see. I'm like a seasoned veteran and you have no idea.
Oh, I'm glad you told me that, honestly, because I have to get my head around the fact that he has a love interest, because that doesn't make any sense with the character at all.
I don't know if it's a love interest.
Yeah, it sounds more like it's just like a foil for him, if anything.
So what, like Catwoman?
Basically.
It's a woman in the game because you're supposed to these days.
Oh, is it one of those? Okay.
I went there.
We're glad you did.
Because I am the only person on this show who can say that and not get lynched.
You might be right about that these days.
Yeah. It's just that's unfortunately the reality that frustrates the shit out of me. Because personally, I would rather, if a developer can't write female characters, I'd rather they leave them out, because I would rather have no female characters in a game than shitty ones. And a huge pet peeve of mine is the girlfriend / wife / whatever that they put in the game just to have her there. I mean, this is a bit, it doesn't quite fit, but it's a bit like the way Anna Grimsdottir started in Splinter Cell compared to who she is now. She started as the wet blanket in a short skirt. Now she's a viable, important foil to Sam Fisher, who has her own personality and is integral to that team. Like, he needs her even though he doesn't realize he does. And, but I mean, I don't really care if there's no female character in a game, as long as it makes sense. I would rather that than stuffing a female character in because you have to have the girl. Because you can tell when developers do that. They have no idea idea what to do with her. You know, Metro Last Light was a classic example of that.
Yeah, I didn't hear any good things about that, though.
The problem with Metro Last Light was that was a, undeniable flaw in an otherwise really good single-player first-person shooter experience. Like, some of the level designs in that game were fantastic, but the writing was objectively not good. And that's really unfortunate. It really surprises me that companies, especially publishers, don't look at a game and go, this part's really good. We're going to bring in somebody to clean this up because we think this can be great.
Yeah.
And that's just because they're more concerned about this quarter on their balance sheet than really making a great artistic product. And it's sad because there were some really great things about Last Light. Really good things,
Yeah.
Except corporations run the AAA titles, so.
I almost feel like, though, and that's one of the things I love about Dishonored, is I almost feel like it got away with it because it made the game, it made the spiritual successor to Thief, but the way it did it was the only way to get the good ending in that game is to play it like you played a classic Thief game.
Yep.
But the game let you play it any way you wanted to. So they could ship it out there and go, oh, you can play however you want. Look, our investors love this and blah, blah, blah. But the real secret, the real dirty secret is, oh, by the way, you don't want to be an ass.
Yeah, when you get that bad ending, you're like, what? No! And then you're invested in going back and playing it the right way. I loved that. Full disclosure, I loved the shit out of everything about Dishonored. Just loved it. Thought it was an amazing game.
It's a great game.
Will defend that game to the friggin' death. But yeah, I really liked that, what I call carrot as opposed to stick element of playing with minimal casualties and minimal violence. And the thing I loved about it is it wasn't a political point. It was an artistic point.
Yep.
But I just love that.
And it doesn't take away from, like, I even as Corvo, in that way, I never felt powerless. Like, at one point, and it kind of felt, I get the same feeling when I played, like, the Batman Arkham Asylum games. Like, you find a high point in the geography, and you kind of scope out what's going on the ground, and then you turn into, like, Apex Predator mode, and you just make your kills. Not kills necessarily, but, you make your move, you take out your targets, you stash the bodies, and then it's like nothing ever happened. And that's just the coolest thing. When you can do all that, and there's that feeling of, and nobody knows you did all this, and that's so cool.
It's the elegance, the elegance to the design. I completely agree with you. Just, absolute work of art right there, top to bottom. They had the right art director, they had the right team, and the right story for that series of mechanics.
And it gave me that feeling again, and I haven't had that feeling since I played Thief 2, which was great. So.
Yeah.
Don't give me love. Don't give me pain. Wisdom of pride, giving a sense. Don't give me love. I've had my share. Beauty no rest, give me truth, they say. A crow flew to me, kept its distance, such a proud creation. I saw it so, envied its pride, but needed nothing it had.
Anything else, Patrick? We're still on.
No, that's it.
What about you, Julian?
Just real quick for me, because it's kind of going long, but I did finally get to have my first comic convention experience this past weekend.
Nice.
Which somehow I've just never been able to go. We have one in Austin called Wizard World Austin, and I've literally been working every weekend that it's existed, even at my new job where I don't work weekends. Last year I had to work the weekend, so I've never been able to go. And I ended up going with friend of the show, John Golson. And it's kind of funny because my first E3, it was sort of like starting the show with a showstopper type of thing, where my first E3, I've talked about before, it was the Holy Trinity, for Nintendo. It was like the first time you got to play Wind Waker, Mario Sunshine, and Metroid Prime, right? I met Miyamoto on that trip. Bob Burnquist skateboarded by me, like in front of the convention center. I met Sharon Lawrence from NYPD Blue at the Pantry that year. Like, it was just a crazy trip, and like none of them ever came close to that. So here,
that was before it all tightened up.
Right, yeah, this was 2000 and
I know the year because the games you're talking about. Yeah. I mean, okay, last year's shoe was right down on the floor of the PlayStation press conference. But everybody's like, what the hell's he doing here? Because that doesn't happen at E3 anymore. But no, you're totally right. After that year, it all just, everything went behind closed doors, and it's not the same experience anymore.
Yeah, well, I think I went 2002 to 2004. And it was still pretty big, but then I went again in 2010, and it was a completely different show for me.
Ridiculous.
But yeah, you're right, yeah. But yeah, so here, I ended up getting into the Dallas Comic Con. This wasn't the main Dallas Comic Con. This is called Fan Days. It's a 2-day show. And I went because John was there with his co-host Moises for their comic book podcast called Giant Sized. And so they got me in, you know, with an exhibitor badge, basically. So I got like this really awesome, like, first experience at a con that I'll never be able to recreate, because like Moises actually hosts a lot of the Q&A panels, and John and Moises were around, you know, actually like getting interviews with comic book creators for their show. So, you know, it was really nice. I mean, we didn't have to like stand in line to get our badge. Walked right into the show. I got into the Alex Kingston panel, she's an actress from Doctor Who. Yeah. I got in the back way. I was like in one of the first rows. I got to meet Terry Farrell, who played Dax on Deep Space Nine, like actually meet her.
Nice.
And not in like a pay for her autograph way. It was hey, like I'm with these guys who, you know, hosted your panel type of way, and just get to have like this really brief conversation with her. It was really freaking cool. I wish that I could do that every time, because I know I won't have that experience again. It was just so nice. I mean, I'm so disconnected from what I call my people. Like, really, I don't get to talk about this stuff unless we're doing this show together, because, I mean, my friends who are geeks are all, like, far away now, for the most part, or they're super busy, so I don't get to really do this stuff very much. You know, so, of course, like, seeing, like, all the costumes, like, that was a big deal for me. All the cosplay I thought was freaking awesome. Real quick, I told this story because I'm actually on a guest episode of Giant Size that should be going up soon, where they kind of interviewed me about my first experience, but I'll tell it again here in case you don't go and download that. For me, it was like the best parts of the show were like these little bitty, like just weird moments that you can only experience at a place like that. Like, me and John were sitting and we were just eating lunch on the first day. And then, you know, the red Power Ranger from the original Mighty Morphin series walks by. So yeah, this wasn't like a guy in a poorly fitting costume that was out of shape. This was a guy that looked like he came off of the set of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like, it was a perfect representation of the costume. And I told John, I was like, hey, look, it's the Red Ranger. He's just chilling. Like, I guess his morpher didn't work or something. He can't teleport back to Zordon, so he just has to hoof it right now. But, you know, totally the Red Ranger. And this was just 10 minutes after I saw the most incredible Batman and Catwoman I have ever seen, because they looked like they had walked off the pages of the comic book. The guy in the Batman costume was like 6'6". And built, and his costume was perfect, and like the Catwoman looked like she had been drawn by I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who was drawing Catwoman when the New 52 started, he's a pinup artist. It makes me mad that I forget his name, but I mean, she looked like that. I mean, curves for days, legs for days, like perfect costume, probably like 5'10", so she really complimented Batman well. I didn't get a picture because we were eating, but holy crap. And then literally immediately after that, this guy dressed as Nightwing drives by on a motorcycle, and it wasn't like a regular motorcycle, this was like a cosplay motorcycle.
Nice.
And I was like, that does not look like a guy dressed as Nightwing. That looks like a guy who's actually going to go and fight some crime right now.
Sweet.
You know, it was just this really awesome thing. And then, of course, just being able to, like, see all these people just enjoying their fandom, all ages and types and, you know, races and stuff. Like, it didn't matter. I really liked seeing, like, a lot of young people there, a lot of little Star-Lords and little Gamoras running around.
Yay! This makes me so happy.
like a ton of Lady Captain Americas and Lady Thors, and not like, I'm not saying like Lady Thor from like the current run, but I mean like women dressed up as Chris Hemsworth's Thor.
Yeah, the femme version, Femme Thor and Femme Loki. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Femme Loki is like one of the hottest things on the planet as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, there was actually a really sexy like lingerie Loki.
It's just hot. I can't explain why. Just women embracing that space.
Picture of that?
Because you know she's up to no good.
But a bomb.
And then, of course, I spent like way too much money. I mean, I'll probably get into it for Consumption Junctions later, but I mean, I ended up getting like all of Saga in trade form because they were all half off at this one booth. I picked up the trade for Hush because even though I have the individual issues, like I haven't had a chance to reread it since it was published because they're all boxed up somewhere. Started to get closer to completing my runs of Impulse and Young Justice, which is difficult to do, I might add, because you go to a show like that and you pour through every single set of long boxes and you'll find like one issue of each of those comics because they weren't, flying off the shelves back in the 90s, and the people who liked those books didn't get rid of them. So
yeah, Impulse was a totally underrated series.
Hell yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a really good time, and I'll definitely be going back. Real quick, panel-wise, I went to the Stephen Amell panel from Arrow, and that man is amazingly nice and genuinely loves playing that character and genuinely loves interacting with his fans. I was shocked at how effortlessly he did that. Same thing with Alex Kingston from Doctor Who. She was actually a last-minute replacement. I'm not one of those pay for autographs type people, but originally slated for that slot was Billie Piper, who played Rose. And if she had been there, I would have totally paid for the photo op and the autograph and tried to get a intro for the show from her. Because also pants in England is slang for underwear, so I think she would have thought that the name of the show was hilarious. But unfortunately she wasn't there. But no, it was just a great time, and also, and we'll get into it later, but I mean, that was I think the first time that I had smiled in almost a month, and it was sorely needed, and just had a great time. And I can't thank John Golston enough. He's going to be on the show again soon, but, it was one of those things where I was like, hey, dude, can we hang out this weekend because I don't want to be alone? And he was like, well, I'm actually on my way I'm going to be going to Dallas for a Comic-Con. Do you want to go? And I was like, yes, I do.
Nice.
And I'm glad that I went.
That's a great story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I'm in the process of losing a lot of weight, and it's funny that we mentioned it already, but because of my lack of hair and stuff like that, the costume that I think I can pull off the best if I slim down enough is actually Agent 47. So maybe in like a year from now, I'll try to bust that out. But I have to shell out for the imitation silver ballers because you can't do that costume without the pistols.
Yeah. Who are you going to get to put the barcode on the back of your head?
I don't know. I'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, because that's a stencil.
Yeah.
If we ever do something where we're going somewhere together, I will put. If you're gonna do that, I'll put together a Garrett costume and we'll rock it.
Oh man, nice.
That sounds good.
I gotta get me a green-eyed contact, and we can do this.
Oh,
we'll tweet it out to Square Enix.
Yeah.
Julian, you kind of made me depressed there because I just realized I had been wearing corduroys the whole time. I had to do pants while you were telling that story.
Oh, it's okay. We have a lady on the show, so I left my pants on.
What lady? There's a woman here, but there are no ladies.
Fair enough. Oh, and
Take
Patrick,
off the pants. Let him breathe.
real quick, I do have to mention it because he might be listening to the show because I gave him a business card, and hopefully he is. But and Patrick, I sent you a picture, but one of the coolest outside of the box costumes I saw at the show was Tactical Link, which was this guy dressed up in the traditional Link tunic, but it was kind of more military grade, and he had a blast shield, a riot shield with the Triforce logo on it.
Oh, wow.
And then he had a rifle.
Fabulous.
Yeah, he had a rifle in a holster on his back, and then it was wrapped in a purple sash, and it looked like the wrapping for the Master Sword. It was really cool.
Wow.
I like those more imaginative costumes.
Yeah.
I love the adapted costumes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
fun
steampunk anything.
Right.
I've steampunked Harley Quinn. I've steampunked Poison Ivy. We steampunked Sephiroth from Final Fantasy.
Wait, a femme version of that, or?
Yeah, Femme steampunk Sephiroth for my.
That sounds amazing.
It was like we still had the white wig and like the basics, but it was all like Victorian, bordering on cosplay, but still had like the corset and stuff. It was so fun. Yeah.
What like kind of material do you use? Do you like have a real corset and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, well, I'm a corset freak, so I've got a bazillion of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we actually did that one in denim just because it felt like that made sense for that particular character. But the cool thing about that is my cousin's a cancer survivor. So for her to want to do this, she got big into the anime scene because when you can't go out because you have no immune system from chemotherapy, you read and play video games a lot. And this was a girl that, you know, when what is it? Forget, it's that kids with cancer thing where you, like a Make-A-Wish.
Yeah, Make-A-Wish.
Not terminal, okay. Yeah. But she had a choice between a trip to Disney World for her whole family and like a gaming PC. And she chose the gaming PC. And I'm like, one of us.
Wow.
One of us. You know, I was like, yes. So when she wanted to get into this stuff, obviously I had to make it happen.
Nice.
You know, so it's see, this is what I love about cosplay is it's the stories, right? And fandom in general, you get these moments that are just like, this sounds stupid, but they're life affirming. Mm-hmm. You know, they're a step. There's a reason you call people who aren't in fandom mundanes. You know, because as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have those magical moments that you just, you know, they're really stupid, but they make you really excited, that's living as opposed to existing. Right? Life doesn't have to make sense every hour of the day.
Yeah, I was definitely, like, as we were just even walking in, like, I was, you know, I'm not a very excitable person. I'm kind of even keel all the time. And I was like, John, they're my people. Look, there's a beast, and there's a look at that. That's awesome. And you know, like that does not. I don't do that very often.
But it's the place to do that. Like Definitely. If you're not doing that there, you're doing it wrong. Why are you spending money to walk around and spend more money if you're not getting that nerd high?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, the only thing that you can compare it to is, you know, the Civil War reenactment, what they call a wargasm. You know, it's a similar thing, and people don't understand why you do it, and then you experience it, and some people get hooked.
Yeah.
You know, but it is, I mean, you feel like you're living, right, as opposed to just marking time. You feel like you're somebody. Mm-hmm. And that's what I find so amazing about it, is that it's giving people validity and you know, they feel like they're part of something, and with, you know, with geeks, let's face it, we're all sort of, you know, bullied as kids, or, you know, we never quite fit in. There's that social awkwardness and that, you know, that social anxiety. But you get people engaged in a topic that they care about, and all that goes away. And suddenly you've got a person who has trouble speaking public, unable to shut up. And I think that's just magic. Mm-hmm. You know, I just love that. It's what keeps me going, is hearing about that and experiencing that, just somebody coming alive over fictional stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, I love that.
Yeah. That's, I mean, if it's what makes you, like, we all do this because this is our hobby. This is what we do, and it's work, but we do it because we enjoy it and it's fun, you know? So why not just embrace it as much as possible, right? That's kind of makes sense, right? So, are you all set, Julian?
Yeah, that's all for me.
All right, cool. So, as far as immediate consumption goes, I am consuming Maker's Mark Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, which I have never tried before today, because everybody told me, oh, Maker's Mark is great, which kind of makes me go, well, then it's like that hipster thing, and we kind of talked about that already. It's like, well, if everybody else likes it, then there's probably like some trendy thing, and trends are always weird. Like, I hate pop music, and I hate, like, just, whatever. So I ended up picking it up, and turns out this is really good stuff. So I'm enjoying that. But as far as, you know, nerd culture goes, I actually spent a lot of time on my cell phone recently just because of different things going on. I had to take a lot of time off of work, but it didn't let me, like, it wasn't the kind of time off of work where I could turn on my TV and get invested in a video game. I mean, one of the things that happened was our furnace broke and we had people here fixing it.
Oh, no.
They ended up having to replace it. It was just one thing after another. And yeah, it was that week where it got to like 10 below zero for 2 nights. So that was fun. I have a pellet stove. We survived. Everything's good. But the point is, I didn't want to have like the TV going and all this other stuff going on, but a little cell phone game will work. And I found this game called Mighty Dungeons, which is actually based pretty strongly off a board game called Hero Quest.
Sweet.
It's a really strong representation of it, and it's pretty much...
Wait. Hero Quest, like the Milton Bradley, like... I think it was Milton Bradley, like, had like dungeons that you put together and little plastic figures. I wanted that so badly as a kid.
Well, guess what?
Oh,
now
I wanted that so bad.
Online. And you can pick up Mighty Dungeons, and it's not, like I said, it's not a perfect representation, but it represents the spirit of the game pretty strongly. Where, it's the dungeons are all set up and there's doors, and you can't see what's on the other end of the door until you open the door, and then everything that's on the other side of the door tries to eat your face off. So it's a dungeon crawler. And I'm pretty good at those games. I mean, I played Etrian Odyssey, and this feels like a lighter version of that. Like, I got the feeling that it was kind of like, here's a great game to introduce somebody to dungeon crawlers to, because you can just pick, the sword-wielding behemoth character, put your points into, strength and health, and just mow everything down like a bulldozer, and it's pretty easy to do that. And then you can make things more complex by using, assassins or spell-wielding characters that are your typical glass cannon types. But the thing is, it's a great one to introduce people to these types of games from, because there's no huge punishment for death. If you die, it just resets the dungeon and you start it over again.
Cool.
And it seems it's not in the beta phase, but it seems like the guy is still making improvements on it. There's some bugs. One of the bugs is, for example, every time you do a dungeon. So once you complete a dungeon, the dungeon levels up.
Nice.
Which means you can go back through the dungeon again, but all the enemies have like twice as much health, and they're way more difficult. So basically you can play the game through multiple times over and over and over again, and everything just keeps getting stronger along with you. There's a bug where if you complete all the dungeon objectives, the dungeon levels up while you're still in it. This can be a problem. So be aware of that. But all in all, I mean, it's simple. The stories are, pulpy, bubblegum chewing. Like, they aren't really like, if you're looking for hardcore role playing with like deep plot development, this is not where to look for it. But if you just want the mechanics of a dungeon crawler on your cell phone in an interface that works, that does it. And I've done every dungeon in the game as a brawler, and I'm going to go through again and do it with a character that's a little more complex. There is weapon degradation, but there are weapons that are immune to it. So, for example, you can get regular like long swords, and there's different materials of long swords, but if you get a mithril one, those are immune to degradation. So if you just save up enough money, you can eventually, if you don't like that sort of thing, you don't have to get into it, I guess. Same thing with armor and all that stuff. And the game will surprise you and will occasionally kill you, so it's not a complete softball, but yeah, it's a great first dungeon crawler for people, I think. The other thing is, during one of my days off, I did get use of the TV. Basically, the kids had a snow day, but they had stuff to do. So I have the Megaman X collection, but the only game I played on it is the original X, because that was the one I played on the Super Nintendo. That was the one I knew. I played it. And then after I played it, I didn't really feel like going on to X2, because playing those games back to back, for some reason I can do it with the original Mega Mans. I can't do it with the X games. Probably because the step down, in the original Mega Man, you just lose all your boss weapons and you start again and you have to acquire them. With the X games, your life bar is cut in half. You're missing some of the things that make you durable. You have to rediscover all the stages without that durability, and it's harder, but it's also more rewarding as a result. But it's the same thing as the Etrian Odyssey games, where I can't do them one after another. I need to breathe in between them, because the idea of that reset, that hard reset, is a pretty dramatic thing right after you've just developed this uber party or these, this monstrous, robot that's just steamrolling through everything. So I played Mega Man X2 for the first time, and that game is fantastic. I think the ones that people point to as the two strongest games in the franchise are Mega Man X and Mega Man X3. Since I have not played Mega Man X3, I can say that Mega Man X2 definitely feels like a continuation of X. It doesn't feel any better than X, but it certainly doesn't feel worse. And I liked it. And man, they don't make them like they used to. That game is unforgiving. And I dig that about it. Like, there's that initial thing where you're just chipping away at these stages, and then, okay, finally I figured out the stage and get to the end boss, and then you try to figure out the boss's pattern, and you just realize, okay, I'm never going to get through this with the Buster, so let's try another one. And
if you're good, you'll get through it with the Buster, mister.
Right. Hold on now. You have to pick a starting point, and sometimes you get to that end boss and you're just like, okay, this guy isn't my starting point. None of this makes sense. I found my comfort zone starting point the third or fourth boss I tackled, which ended up being the snail, which is a pretty good indication that's a soft target. It's like, when you play Mega Man 4 and one of them is Toad Man, you're like, I think I'm going to start with the Toad. I don't know why I took Crystal Snails number 4, but I looked at like Flame Centaur and I was like, not you. So we went. Eventually, I worked my way to Crystal Snail, and yeah, he's very, very tough, but his pattern is freaking easy. After a couple tries, he didn't even do any damage to me. So I'm not going to drag through the whole game, but my crowning achievement was I found the uber secret upgrade, which is the Dragon Punch from Street Fighter.
Okay, I couldn't remember because I think
in the first one it's the Hadouken.
Fireball.
It's the Fireball. In this one, it's the Dragon Punch. And I
Did
found
they do the
that
Hurricane Kick in the third one. I don't remember.
I don't know what the third one is, but I found that one on my own, and
Excellent.
I had missed like 2 heart containers. I think I found the light capsules. I think I may have had to look one up. I try not to look stuff up when I play these games because I feel like that's not fair. But when you only have a certain amount of time and I know I'm missing an upgrade, it's like, I give up. Game, you win this one. Let me just look up the upgrade. So I had to look up one of the upgrades, and I did miss 2 heart containers. I would not look those up. But I found the Dragon Punch on my own, and I was pretty proud of that. So, and the last thing was, I got to introduce my oldest to Metroid Prime. And oh man, so he loves his first-person shooters, especially military-themed ones. It's what all the kids are into. We don't have Call of Duty. I don't let him play Call of Duty. I think that's too much for, and it differs from kid to kid to kid. I mean, my youngest may be 14, 15 years old, and he might be able to get his head around this, but I don't think he's ready. And that's a parental call. That's why the ratings exist. So I don't think he's ready for Call of Duty. He's ready for the ones that are very cartoony and bloodless. And then when Metroid rolled around, he goes, "Oh, I like that one. It's you're running around and shooting things with a gun." I said, "Look, you have to understand. This game is not about running around and shooting things with a gun. That's a factor in it. It's about exploring. It's about discovering. It's about finding things out." And he goes, "No, I got it. I understand. I got it." I was like, "I don't think you do, but try it, okay?" So he went and tried it, and he played it for a good 2 hours, and he stopped and went to go play Minecraft. And I thought about talking to him, and then I thought, no, I know how this game works, because Metroid is like a freaking brain worm, man. It gets in there, and you'll be doing something else, and you'll be thinking about how you're stuck, and what can you possibly do to get out of this situation that you're in, and all of a sudden an idea occurs to you, and you just go racing back to that game. It's like Zelda. In that regard. And that's exactly what happened. So he played Minecraft for like 3-4 hours, and then he's like, "Can I play Metroid again?" He's like, yeah, go play Metroid Prime. So he ended up going to play Metroid Prime, and then he hasn't stopped after that. Like, he's on it now. So, that's a really cool thing to do. But is that game still on sale?
No. Mm-mm.
No? All right. So.
Yeah, I missed out on that.
But, yeah. There is something really cool in seeing the games that you loved when you were, a little younger, getting picked up by your kids. That's really neat. So, kind of like, I love this game too, and I'll just sit there and watch him. And man, it is the hardest thing to not say something. Like, I see him struggling with a part, and I'm like biting my lip, like, don't tell him, let him figure it out. You'll steal, because all the joy in these games is figuring it out, and then that rush you get when you're like, oh yeah, I figured this out, or I beat this, or I solved this riddle or this puzzle. So, I didn't want to steal that from him.
Yeah, and I think especially kids these days, like they're not used to figuring things out for themselves in a lot of cases because the internet is just at a touch away. So it's good to learn those lessons.
And I know this isn't one that he's going to go to the kids on the playground and get answers from, because I don't think they're playing it. But
I would say that's a different thing too, because we went on the playground and got answers for stuff too. Like, that's kind of how NES strategies were formed, because that's really, you had Nintendo Power and you had the playground.
The obtuse ones, but like when you got to, I would say Ocarina of Time was the last time that really happened. And after that, it was kind of like figure it out or go online and read somebody else that figured it out. But he's not going online. And the Metroid games, I always figured out. I figured the Metroid games are, to be fair, ever since A Link to the Past, the Zelda games have been, they don't hand the solutions to you, but they've been more approachable than, say, like Zelda and Zelda 2. So.
Well, because those games were made in the days where game magazines still existed, and they wanted you to buy hint guides.
Yeah.
Pre-internet, where who's going to buy that? Everybody's going to look up walkthroughs online, right?
Right. But even A Link to the Past, I think a lot of that was just game design too. Like, even A Link to the Past existed in that time, and there's things like I could not figure out how to get to the cape in A Link to the Past. The cape up on Mount Doom or whatever. I keep on Mount Doom.
Nice.
Can you see the wires are crossing? I could not figure that out on my own. I had to look.
The universe is collapsing. Yeah, no, it's true. People were willing to spend a lot more time on games. Like, oh god, I remember those old parser-based adventures like King's Quest and the original Quest for Glory. Mm-hmm. You'd spend forever trying to figure out what, sentence to put in to make it go. Mm-hmm. Now people won't do that. People buy far more games a year.
Right.
I mean, God, back in the day, I'd buy 3, maybe 4 games for, the Atari per year when things just started going to consoles and, as opposed to arcade. I'm really dating myself on that, I know. But, you think back to that stuff and you realize how different the habits associated with gaming were, and it's mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what's so cool going back and playing a game like one of the early Metroids. It's like you're in a time warp, like, wow.
Yeah, the original Metroid.
You realize how different it is.
It's something else. Oh my gosh. So is the original Zelda.
Yes.
But yeah. And there was, even if you go back, you can see hints of it, play DuckTales Remastered for you young whippersnappers, right? And here's why. Not because, it's exactly like those games, but because it retains certain aspects of them. In DuckTales, objects would appear if you jumped and hit them, but they're invisible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like gems and jewels and things like that. That is something that got left in the 8-bit era.
Exploration changed.
Yeah.
The concept of exploration and replay value just completely changed. Because with a 2D environment, you can explore every nook and cranny far, far more completely than you can a 3D environment. There's just too many possibilities.
Right. And the games, there's a reason I can play Mega Man 3 and 4 and beat the whole game using, except for the situations where you have to, using nothing but my arm cannon.
Right.
Because that was the only game I had to play for an entire freaking year.
There you go. Yeah. It's the same thing.
So,
what I like about the pogo stick jumping in DuckTales, which I was also playing last week and forgot about because it got lost in the rubble, was that when you jump up and down and stuff, it's like that kitty innocence you had when you jumped on a pogo stick. Like, you thought you were going to get something if you jumped high enough.
Mm-hmm.
In this game, you just might.
Yeah.
Those are good games. But yeah, he's discovering Metroid Prime, and he seems to be really enjoying it. So that's kind of that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I can turn him over the original Zelda and go, here, play this gem, and he'll go like, nah, man, this is garbage.
The funny thing is, if you gave it to him on an iPhone, it would be a very different experience.
Oh, there's an
You
idea.
know, like if those old, isometric RPGs were put onto iPhone, they'd be the greatest thing since cheese, because people expect a simpler experience on a mobile device. It's just consoles come with a set of expectations now that you're going to get more than you could on your phone. I think that's part of it.
The only argument I would make is that even the games you play on your phone are better at explaining themselves to you than a lot of, like, the original Legend of Zelda was. Like, the original Legend of Zelda dropped you on a map and said, good luck.
But then you get something like Flappy Bird that's deliberately hard and everybody got freaking hooked on it.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
it's all, there's some sort of special sauce in those games that just hit. Like, is there anything especially remarkable about Angry Birds except the audio and character designs? No, there's nothing special about the gameplay in those games, but it was just the right game at the right time. Candy Crush Saga is just a redux of Bejeweled, but people love it. It's something about the combination of art style, mechanic, and, whatever little extra things they put into it. And just being marketed properly that capture the public imagination. So, it's tough. I don't think Candy Crush Saga is an especially enjoyable game to play, but that game's not built for me.
Right.
It's built for the people who are willing to give 99 cents to beat a level.
Right. But I also feel like Angry Birds, for example, I played Angry Birds for a while. Not a whole long
Yeah, I did too.
time, because it's charming.
Right.
And it's fun, but then after a little while, it's like, the luster wore off of that one pretty quickly, but for some people, man, that just stuck.
Yeah. Because it's there and it's easy and it's not going to disappoint you and it's cute. I agree. Charming is the perfect word for it. And, I go back to the audio on it. That's what makes that game work, I think, in a lot of ways.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. The end of part 1 of our episode 65 with Liana. Hope you enjoyed that. I think she's just a lot of fun to talk to. Has a lot of interesting opinions on games. I think she is actually really open to a lot of things that maybe people just think are just terrible outright. Or I like the fact that she tends to look at things from a different perspective, and that's always a lot of fun. You never kind of know where things are going to go when you have a guest, and I quite enjoyed talking to her on this episode. So that's where this one is going to close out. I hope that everybody enjoyed what they heard of Liana so far, because she'll be back next week, where we get into a very heady, very serious discussion about mental health and how it relates to video games, and how video games can be used to heal, and just a lot of stuff. You're going to see a different side of the Nerds Without Pants for sure. Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You can be the judge. But for now, again, thank you for listening. Keep it pantsless, Internet, and we will see you next week with another edition of our special Talk with Liana. Thanks. Bye-bye.